Did you know that 9 years later, Dark Souls 3 is still one of the highest searched for gaming terms on the internet? GTA 5 is one of the highest grossing entertainment products ever, and everyone's favourite dungaree/pipe enthusiast has remained relevant for decades. There are some video games that are just so expertly crafted that they must feel like an impossible act to follow. The challenge of making a sequel to a legendary title is an unenviable one to say the least. From the outset, it might seem like an impossible task anyway. Nobody really cared about the books that came after the Da Vinci Code. When I was young with spiky hair, the one topic every emo kid agreed on was that Linkin Park never made a better album than their first, and as much as I enjoy Die Hard 2 and 3, the first one is a flawless masterpiece. However, the video game industry waits for no one, and success stories are always pushing to add new chapters. Sometimes they manage to get it right. Other times, they struggle a bit.
Come on, Roger!
And in some cases, well, they don't even try. And so this is what we are going to be talking about today. When a game is considered perfect, how exactly are you supposed to follow that up? What is the right strategy to take? And which ones, if any, can we consider to be a success? The legacy and impact of Dark Souls 3 cannot be overstated. It wasn't just a sequel, it was a culmination, a love letter to series fans that brought everything full circle. It took the best elements of Dark Souls, and influenced by the success of Bloodborne, paired them with faster and more refined gameplay. Dark Souls 3 was both a continuation and a farewell. It was a game that respected its roots whilst confidently moving forward. Oh, and I suppose I could mention the bosses? Longtime fans of this channel will know how much I love the dancer, but equally so, who could ever forget the epic bridge-top battle with the Dragon Slayer armor before reaching the archives? Or holding your breath as you charged the special sword fighting Yhorm and praying he wasn't going to hit you first? Or discovering the untended graves area and fighting Gundir's far, far more ferocious twin? The bosses here are simply iconic. So, as you can imagine, following a game like this, it's not going to be easy. From Software took a radical step forward with Elden Ring. Once again, they created a game that respected its roots and retained its DNA, but then the scope was amplified massively across the board. Everything from the world to the amount of customization to the very weapon arts was dialed up way, way higher than 11. Now, whilst Elden Ring has outsold every other Souls game combined, Dark Souls 3 still boasts a strong player base to this day. Many do consider Dark Souls 3 to be the superior game, citing its more linear but more captivating world design, better balanced weapon arts, and naturally, its bosses. Despite the financial success, the questions still remain. Did Elden Ring take things too far with its evolution formula? Did it go too big with the weapon arts? Did the Spirit Ashes break the game? But equally, were some of the bosses just too hard if you didn't use every tool in your arsenal? We're talking about Souls games here, so we have no clear answer. I have never seen another gaming community so passionately united and divided on the same subject. But for the purposes of this discussion, I think the enduring popularity of Dark Souls 3 does say rather a lot. When I was running this script idea by my wife, I joked that Skyrim had been released so many times that it was even playable on smart fridges. And even as the words left my mouth, I wondered where the hell I'd pulled that from. And frankly, I put it at 50-50 whether or not it was true. Obviously, it wasn't true. The Skyrim Very Special Edition joke was just that, a joke. But at a certain point, would you be surprised if this came true? Skyrim has transcended generations. When Bethesda are on point, they really do have a knack for creating some of the most incredible lived-in worlds. Whilst Fallout 4 is my personal favourite, no other Bethesda game even comes close to the success of Skyrim. At their core, every re-release of Skyrim has been just that. Not a remake, but a re-release. The Special Edition is probably the closest it has come to a remaster, owing to the improved visuals and lighting, but even the Anniversary Edition is just the Special Edition with more content in it. The VR Edition, whilst admittedly very cool, is also basically the Special Edition. But who cares? It's freaking Skyrim. Everybody still buys it. Bethesda do not have to recreate it from the ground up. They don't have to overhaul the mechanics or rewrite the story. And let's be honest, they probably aren't ever going to. For many gamers at this point, Skyrim is the epitome of comfort and familiarity. They may associate it with their younger years. They may just know it so well that they can autopilot and turn their brain off. All of this for a game that offers so much freedom and choice in an epic adventure, it's no wonder people keep on coming back for more. Now, on the other side of the Pacific, we have Capcom, who also know a little something about this particular business strategy. I am talking, of course, about Resident Evil 4. Leon's mission to rescue the President's inexcusably shrill daughter from the clutches of a parasitic-powered monster cult shifted the Resident Evil franchise away from its horror roots and more towards action. And we the people could not get enough of it. Now, to be fair, the re-releases of the original game have added in their fair share of upgrades. I wasn't very impressed with the Assignment Ada minigame when I first beat the GameCube version, but when I saw Separate Ways bundled in with the PS2 release, you better believe I picked it up on day one. I never played the Wii version, but everyone I know who did was adamant that it was the best version. Apparently the smoother and more precise aiming just could not be beat. Aside from the eventual VR version, it was just graphical improvements after that. Though it really does say a lot about the legacy of this game that Capcom brought out the VR version 7 years after the previous version. I mean, technically it was 5 years, but the PS4 version didn't change anything from the Ultimate HD version besides the console label, as far as I know. The cultural impact of Resident Evil 4 was insane. It wasn't the first game to use the over-the-shoulder camera style, but it was the first game that did it so damn perfectly that it basically became a genre. And whilst the Resident Evil series itself misstepped a bit following the success of the fourth entry, it eventually got things back on track. The remakes in particular have sold phenomenally well, combining the camera style that Leon pioneered with the horror that we all wanted. And this right here is where Capcom got the best of both worlds, because unlike Skyrim, they eventually did completely remake Resident Evil 4, and they are now happily reaping double the benefits. Skyrim and the original Resident Evil 4 both remain cultural juggernauts, consistently ranking among best-selling and most-played titles. So if a game is already perfect, is the lesson to just keep it alive? To never stop giving the people what they want? If it ain't broke, don't fix it? But as everybody's favourite Backstreet Boy has already proven, if you're popular enough, you can get away with both strategies, both fixing and not fixing it. And let's be honest, if they ever did make a full remake of Skyrim, the entire world would lose its mind. Whenever a gaming site publishes a list of the greatest games of all time, it's not uncommon to see 90s and 2000s era Nintendo titles taking the top spot. And whilst it's easy to brush this off as nostalgia blindness, I have to give credit where it's due, because Mario games, by and large, really are that good. Revisiting the likes of Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World for this video completely blew my mind. As a gamer entering his 5th decade of enjoying the medium, I was stunned to see how well these games from my early childhood hold up today. Fluid yet precise gameplay, creative levels, secrets to discover, a spectacular array of costumes and powers, all wrapped up in a colourfully charming good time. And it's easy to see why Mario was so popular. The Mario franchise has thrived for decades by never allowing itself to stagnate. Instead of relying on minor iterations, each major Mario title reinvents itself, whilst maintaining the core mechanics that made the series so special. The original Super Mario Bros. Game will be 40 years old this September, yet even now Mario is still rocking the 2D look at times, and every time he does, he somehow manages to successfully balance the old and the new. If you haven't yet tried Mario Wonder, believe me when I tell you it's about so much more than just being an elephant. When I finally gave in and bought a Switch, it brought Mario back into my life in a big way, starting with Super Mario Odyssey. Less than 1 hour into the adventure, I threw my hat on a T-Rex, and then became that T-Rex. Every YouTuber is familiar with the struggle of hooking your audience right from the start, but if I could let you guys control dinosaurs, I don't think I'd ever lose another viewer ever. I mean, this was clearly still Mario. He still loved all the shiny coins, and he still had a thing for jumping on the heads of turtles and angry vegetables. Only this time, his hat is sentient, and Mario can use it to possess his enemies. On the face of it, it's such a simple idea, but brought to life, it opened up a whole new world of innovative mechanical possibilities. Like, if you don't want to swim, you can just possess a fish, and swim with a different moveset instead. Or if you want to get all the way over there, in this inexplicably real-world cityscape, why not possess this power line and become electricity? It was just so brilliant. Mix this all up with the expected solid mechanics, sandbox exploration, and some cheeky nostalgic elements, and Mario Odyssey is a game that I simply could not put down. Mario remains one of the most consistently relevant gaming franchises of all time. He has shown that reinvention can be the key if you keep up the standards, as long as you remember your own identity. Rockstar. This section is going to be a bit shorter, because I'm not sure any other publisher could get away with this. Grand Theft Auto V is a household name. Even non-gamers know what it is. It's up there with the likes of FIFA, Destiny, and Call of Duty. We all know how amazing this game is. The 5th entry in the series was also my first, and I played it non-stop for about a month. And you better believe I'll be picking up 6 when it launches. GTA 5 is, at the time of writing, the fastest selling entertainment product in history, and one of the most successful entertainment products of all time. And whilst GTA 5 Online has continued to evolve, this is a game that originally launched in September 2013. With the proposed launch date for Part 6 being 2025, this puts the gap between entries at 12 years. Now, I know GTA 5 has been re-released a few times during the in-between years, much like Skyrim and Resi 4, but GTA 5 gets its own chapter here because Rockstar has a strategy available to them that other publishers don't really have. They have the option of simply allowing their games to remain relevant and to follow them up when they're ready. Their brand recognition is just that good. Their stock is actually that high. In a crunch-heavy industry so frequently shooting itself in the foot, with its own demands and deadlines, Rockstar are able to employ the old showbiz adage of simply leaving them wanting more. Every approach we have discussed so far is open to varying degrees of debate, and these next 2 series will prove no different. They are also, however, largely considered to have missed the mark. And we're going to start with my absolute favourite series of all time. Whilst the first Mass Effect is my personal favourite of the original trilogy, I will always acknowledge that Mass Effect 2 is the better made game. Mass Effect 2 is considered to be one of the greatest RPGs of all time. The characters and their loyalty missions are some of the best you will meet across any medium, and the suicide mission remains one of the most spectacularly epic endings to anything ever. If you have played Dragon Age the Veilguard, I'm sure it didn't take you long to see that once BioWare abandoned the live service bones of the game, they doubled down on the characters and basically just tried to make a bigger Mass Effect 2. Clearly even they know just how much they nailed it back in 2010. When addressing Mass Effect 3, if there is one topic the internet has milked to death, it is the controversy around the ending. But what about the game itself? To put more meat on the bones, Mass Effect 3 was an early victim of corporate interference. The astronomical success of the second game very clearly put dollar signs on EA's eyelids, and they pushed BioWare to include multiplayer on a game they knew was going to sell extremely well. Despite the overall game being great, it was rebuilt from the ground up to facilitate that multiplayer. For a series with such a heavy focus on narrative, this should not have been the priority. It was also rushed to deadline, which likely also impacted the narrative in the process. Whilst the resultant combat and movement for Mass Effect 3 was actually pretty good, it was a wildly different experience from Mass Effect 2. In some ways, it was a definite improvement, with far more freedom and variety with builds and weapons and powers, but it just didn't have that same satisfying visceral feeling. Mass Effect 2 was a vision expertly realised with proper backing and funding. Mass Effect 3 was a conflict of visions that needed potentially another year to be realised into what it could have been. And now for the final series we're going to talk about today, and it's an interesting one for me, because I discovered it at the precise wrong moment to understand why people have such an issue with it. I discovered Halo when Reach came out, and I lived and breathed that game for months. Firefight had me coming back every single day, as I worked towards those stylish armor pieces. And oh my goodness, the story. Everything from the world and the stunning environments, to the characters and the hauntingly epic soundtrack. It completely blew my mind, and I replayed it multiple times. Of course, the one Halo game I could have picked to get started was one of the only two that did not have you play as the Master Chief. I have, of course, since then played all of the Halo campaigns, and have come to the conclusion that Halo's core problem is with its own identity. And a little heads up here, there will be some ending spoilers in this discussion. If you want to skip ahead, you can do so below. Halos 1 to 3 had an excellent story, and what many considered to be a perfect conclusion, despite some of the Covenant's naming conventions being completely ridiculous. I think a lot of us were drawn in by the mystery too, finding out the secret of the Halo rings and why they were made in the first place, how the Flood changed everything, meeting the Gravemind, working with the Arbiter, and it was all just so captivating. And for a stoic protagonist, the Chief had so much heart, and nowhere was this more evident than in his relationship with Cortana, the sassy AI genius living in the back of his helmet. Wrap this all up with excellent enemy variety, satisfying and crunchy gunplay, a wonderfully inventive array of human and alien weapons, and gameplay that rewarded skill and mastery, and Halo's popularity explains itself. After development switched from Bungie to 343 Industries though, the series has struggled to maintain that consistency. Halo 4 divided fans by going all in on a more emotional and character-driven story, which I personally appreciated. But in my opinion, this was all for nothing once the ending of Halo 5 Guardians hit our screens. Why on earth would you follow up Cortana's heart-wrenching sacrifice with her becoming some kind of immortal tyrant that holds the galaxy to ransom? I enjoyed the gameplay of Halo 5 enough, but the ending just felt like a massive slap in the face. Oh, but never mind, let's just invent some entirely new threat for Halo Infinite and kill Cortana off-screen. I'm guessing this is covered in more detail in novels or extraneous media of some kind, but the average player doesn't bother with these things. Also, I have to say that whilst I didn't mind splitting the campaign between Chief's team and Fireteam Osiris at the time, going back to record this footage, it really struck me as a swing and a miss in Part 5. Putting aside the thinly veiled attempt at moving people towards online co-op for a moment, people want the Chief. Not a squad, not a different protagonist, we want the freaking Chief. And I think we can all agree that the whole Chief versus Locke thing turned out to be underwhelming at best. I will always be happy to see Nathan Fillion though, as he makes up at least 50% of my inner child. And then there were all the gameplay changes and multiplayer controversies. Features like armor abilities and sprinting and advanced mobility were a lot of fun, but they were a big departure from the traditional Halo experience. These were, of course, an effort to draw in more players over from the likes of COD and Titanfall. But this had the double-edged result of making the multiplayer feel more like a generic shooter. Halo 5 also launched without content that many fans considered to be quite basic, like split-screen co-op. and then Infinite just peeved everybody off by pushing the live service Battle Pass model whilst dropping key features like Forge. I do have to say though that I had a whale of a time with the Halo Infinite campaign. Open world Halo was far more fun than it had any right to be. That sense of discovery harkened back to the first game quite a bit, and whenever I was able to disassociate the soft reboot from the explanation I was hoping for, I didn't mind the new characters. I think perhaps the lesson with Halo, or at least one of the lessons, is that you need to understand your product. Nintendo usually always knows what we want from Mario. Capcom eventually figured out what we wanted from a horror franchise, and From Software always know how to bring the challenge. It seems that no matter what Halo tries to do, it's just never quite what the people want. Even I've been quite strong in my opinions in this video. By all means pivot, but remember your identity, or at the very least, make sure you still have one in the first place. So, how do you follow up the perfect game? We've covered a lot of different approaches today. Evolution, iterations, reinventions, staying the same forever. Rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, I think we need to judge each case by its merits. I am very curious to hear from you guys on this one, as there are many case studies I could have used today that are rife for discussion. Zelda and God of War being two massive ones off the top of my head. And your opinions on the games and series discussed today might be completely different from mine. Let me know in the comments what you think about following up on perfect games. I'd just like to say, guys, that your responses to my personal appearance at the end of my last video have been incredible, and I've been very moved by your messages of support. It has also been wonderful for me to see so many of you joining my Discord and my memberships. I sincerely do appreciate each and every one of you, and have really enjoyed connecting with you guys. I have also come to accept that live streaming during this difficult time isn't going to be possible. It has taken me so long to make this video, and I have needed so much rest time in between editing sessions. Streaming just isn't on the cards right now, I'm afraid. I would one day like to revisit the fundraising idea, but it's going to have to be after I have beaten the cancer. Thank you as always for watching and supporting my channel, you guys. See you on the next one.